Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Unbalanced with me, Cerys Davage. I hope you're all doing well. It's another day, it's another interview episode, and if you're watching on the video, you may notice that one of us is in broad daylight and the other one of us, I am it's pitch black outside and I'm using artificial light because we're in different time zones today. Today I'm interviewing Allison all the way from Canada. Hi!
Hi, thank you so much for having me on today.
I'm so excited to chat and get to know you. But first of all, introduce yourself to us. Who are you and where are you from?
Yeah, my name is Allison Lang. I'm a disability advocate from Canada. I'm also a content creator, model, and speaker. And recently, which feels surreal to say, I became a first-time Paralympian and bronze medalist.
That is insane. Is that still not quite a reality for you yet? Are you still letting that sink in?
It feels, I don't know how to describe it, but for 3.5 years with my team since Tokyo, we've just been training for this moment, and we had a goal and we achieved it. And so it's just weird coming out of the games and having achieved your goals and then having a break after. A part of my brain almost doesn't register that it happened. It feels like a fever dream, but I
Yeah.
love to talk about it and share my experience with everyone. So it's been
Wow.
wonderful.
Well, I can't wait to learn all about it later on. But first of all, you're a disability advocate, which obviously means you've got a disability. What is it?
Yeah, I was born missing the lower half of my left leg at birth. Unexpectedly, all of the ultrasounds looked normal for my parents, so it was quite a shocker to them and the doctors when I was born. It's interesting to share this part of my life because obviously nobody knew that I would be born with a disability, and I was the very first child for my parents. I'm the oldest of four. And when I was born, the doctors actually took me away from my parents and came back and told them that there was something wrong with me. And I can't even believe what my parents were feeling in that moment, because to hear that there's something wrong with your child is never news you want to hear. But thankfully, my mom is a nurse. So she asked, well, how are all of her internal organs? How's everything inside her body? And they said, everything seems to be fine. She's just missing a leg. And then my parents kind of looked at each other and said, okay, there's no problem there, and raised me just like any other child. But I'm sure we'll get into it more. I mean, my childhood has not been easy, and yeah.
I mean, I can imagine, your parents just having that initial shock because obviously no one expects something like that, especially if it's not like a warning beforehand. But obviously after realizing that, oh, that's all there is, there's no ongoing issue, it must have been something they had to quickly get used to, but still, trying to raise you the same as they were hoping to do anyway.
Oh, absolutely. They threw me into soccer, swim lessons with my siblings. And obviously, I didn't know any different because as a child, you don't really see your differences yet. And so I just always wanted to keep up with them. And that's, I guess, where my mentality is even now as an adult. But I was severely bullied in school. I had a wonderful family and support system there. But in elementary school, I was severely bullied. I'd go for revision surgeries because I'm born with what's called fibular hemimelia. I'm missing the fibular bone beneath my knee, but have my tibia bone. And so as I would grow taller, the end of my residual leg, the bone would start piercing through the skin. And it was so painful. And this happened every time I had a growth spurt. So I went for revision surgeries every 2 to 3 years until I was around the age of 11 and 12. So I would have to relearn how to walk and, get my gait and alignment adjusted at my prosthetist. I'd have to go to school in a wheelchair and on crutches. And obviously, we kind of all know, but kids can be mean. So I was called things like Barbie and peg leg. And there was one instance where one of the kids at school took my prosthetic leg and buried it in the sandbox, so I couldn't find it. yeah, I was mortified.
That is cruelty. Like, I know kids can be mean, but that is next level.
People are always shocked when I tell them I was more than just emotionally bullied. I was also physically bullied in that aspect. And it really hindered with my self-confidence. When I was just at the age of 10, I would go home and tell my mom I didn't want to be alive anymore because I would say things like, I don't understand how people believe in God, because if God were real, why would he make me born with one leg to have to go through something like this that's so painful, the surgeries, but also emotionally painful with the bullying. It was really hard on me. I ended up switching schools. And that was kind of my saving grace in a sense. I don't know much about your disability identity and how you came to flourishing and acceptance of it. But for me, it took a really long time. When I switched schools, I avoided wearing shorts in the summer months, and I would always make an excuse as to why I was limping, because I thought if I hid my disability identity, nobody would ever know I was using a prosthetic leg, and so I could avoid being judged and bullied and made fun of. And that went on for so long, up until even my early 20s, I hid my prosthetic.
That is
Yeah.
such a long time basically hiding who you are. But I'm sure maybe at that time you felt that if your true identity was revealed, then they'd only see you for that and not for you. Like, was that just a chance for people to try to get to know you as a person rather than for your disability?
I think that was part of it for sure. I did want people to get to know me and see me as more than just disabled, but I had such a tough time being accepted for who I was in elementary. I think I just wanted to blend in more than anything, which is what we're trying to tell kids not to worry about now. It's like, why blend in when you can stand out? But that was never something I really thought of when I was younger. I never thought of, I mean, I say now, like my personal saying is your obstacle is your opportunity, because if I weren't disabled, I wouldn't be connecting with people like you right now. I wouldn't have represented Canada at the Paralympic Games. I wouldn't have done all these amazing things. But when you're younger, you don't see the larger picture. And for me, it was more of I was putting a shield up to protect my heart and just kind of get through life. And to be honest, I wasn't living authentically as myself. So there were moments that I didn't truly enjoy because I was so obsessed with trying to hide my disability.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a tough time anyway. How old were you when you moved schools?
We call it in Canada junior high. So like I finished grade 6, which would have been around 11 or 12, and then I switched into junior high, I think around 13.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds similar to the UK school system. You move to high school when you're 12.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's
then very similar.
similar, yeah. But
Yeah.
wow, that's it's like such a young age. Like, you're still trying to figure out who you are, and everyone's got their flaws that they're trying to hide from other people. So I feel like no one's really being authentically themselves when you're that young. Like, you're trying so desperately to fit in with other people and to be like everyone else. So that must have been like a really hard time. For me, my disability had only just started affecting me when I was around 12. So I was just always the slowest in class. You know, I was just always known as like the slow kid. Like, don't pick her to be on the team. Let's like try and race Cerys as a joke because like we're gonna beat her. Like, boys like 3 years younger than me would easily outrun me, and I would just find that horrible.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
didn't really know. I just knew that I had something going on, but I didn't really understand the full extent of it. But yeah, it's just such a tough age, isn't it? Like, to show that authenticity, and to want to truly be yourself when at that age all you want to do is blend in, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we're all going through puberty and our bodies are starting to change, and then you're like, I want to control this part of me and try to hide it. And I'm so sorry that happened, that kids can be mean, but I'm so happy that you've built a platform with your experience to elevate and share stories. So, thank you.
Well, thank you as well. I mean, I'm so glad that our disabilities have connected us. What was like building friendships like? You know, did you do like a big reveal to them like that? That must have been like, that would have been hilarious at like a random like party. People be like, so like, what's your party trick? Oh, actually, here's my prosthetic leg. You know, that would have been the most iconic reveal. But anyway, like, what was that like? I guess being a bit more authentic with your loved ones, I guess.
It's so funny you mentioned the party trick, because I've only ever done that once in my life, and that was at a house party during university where I'm like, oh, this is my party trick, and I took off my leg and was waving it around. But that's just like such a juxtaposition to how I was before that, because I don't know, when I was younger, it didn't really faze me when I was a child. I would play soccer and go to the swim club, and I never felt the need to hide my leg until, yeah, I was approaching those teenage years. And as soon as I started masking my disability, I really thought that anytime I had to tell someone, it had to be this like huge disclosure. And really, I think I put more pressure on myself. I thought, oh, if I'm going to be friends with this girl in school, I have to like sit her down and tell her that I have a disability. And I would almost prepare myself for rejection. And obviously, people that I were friends with, they didn't care. But oftentimes when I would go to sleepover birthday parties, and not every girl there knew, I would wait till everyone went to sleep, and within my sleeping bag, I would take my prosthetic off in the sleeping bag and keep it in there and hidden. So if any of the girls had to wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, they wouldn't see it and get freaked out. And that weighed on me so heavily that I didn't get to live in a lot of moments because I was always thinking of other possibilities. And then the way that I always thought that I had to have this grandiose reveal to people that I was disabled, I carried that over once I started dating. And I always prepared myself and didn't know how to approach it. And I'd go on several dates with people, and then all of a sudden I would kind of be like, I have to tell you something. And I mean, when you're dating, people are kind of like, what's happening? Like, what kind of huge thing are you going to lay on me right now? And anytime that I would say, oh, I was born with one leg, I would kind of give them my little spiel, my shortened story, and then I would show them. And it was kind of like show and tell. I think I made it more awkward because I'd be like, okay, if you have any questions, you can ask me. I wish that someone had just told me when I was younger that it didn't have to be a big deal. Because looking back now, I just want to shake my younger self, being like, you don't have to make it this huge thing. It's not a big deal. And most people that I dated didn't even care. And I just wish that I had that guidance when I was younger, because I think it would have alleviated a lot of the anxiety that I carried around my disability.
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially as you're the one going through it. And I didn't know anyone else with a disability my age when I was younger, when I was a teenager. You feel like the only person going through it, and like, so that makes it a huge deal. Did you know of anyone else in similar situation to you when you were growing up?
Yeah, we have an organization in Canada called the War Amps CHAMP program, and CHAMP stands for Child Amputee. So because I was born with a disability, they often reach out to the mothers right away and match them with another mother with an older amputee, just to give guidance on funding and resources and assistance at hospitals, and just someone that could relate to your situation. So growing up, I had always kind of known someone with a disability, which was so good for me. And the only thing that really impacted me as far as representation was having the lack of representation in regards to disabled people in media and television, advertisements, that kind of thing. I truly never saw disability except for these annual seminars where there was just a room full of just disabled people, or in the media as old people needing nursing homes and walkers. It was great to have those supports, but at the same time, it was really hard for me to integrate that into my everyday life, because every time I thought about disability, it was just disabled people together or old people in advertisements. So I kind of struggled with an identity crisis. I'm like, where are these disabled people in the real world? Why aren't they at my school? Why aren't they on my soccer team? Why don't I see them at the swimming pool? And I truly didn't know that there were other people like me in the world, because it almost felt like a simulation when I was 5 years old going to these conferences. It was like the one time I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's finally children like me. But then you go back home to reality, and it's quite isolating. That is actually part of the reason And the reason that I did find sitting volleyball and how I got introduced to parasport was because a girl that I knew from one of these seminars asked me at the age of 15, just after I quit playing soccer because I could no longer hide my prosthetic. It was really hard. And I went through an experience where some parents said I was a danger to their children on the field and refused to have their kids play against me. So it really
Why?
affected me because if I kicked them in the shin with my prosthetic leg, I could break their kids' legs, which obviously never happened. And there's been no storyline that any amputee has ever broken anyone's leg by kicking them in the shin. So it was one of those things where I needed to get out of sport. It really affected me. Like I get choked up now talking about it. And this girl from the champ seminar invited me to try sitting volleyball. And when I was 15, in my head, I didn't want to be associated with the word disabled. I didn't want to try adaptive sport because I didn't want to be looked at as less than or playing a sport that I couldn't compete in with non-disabled folk. And so at first I said no, and my mom made me go try it. And then finally I met other women that I so wanted to be, but I didn't have the role models on television or anything like that. They had kids, they had husbands, they had partners, they owned homes, they had amazing, successful careers. And then we're on top of it all, we're representing Canada on the international stage in sport. And so finally, I had met a group of individuals where I could see them in everyday life and what they were doing outside of sport and outside of their disability. And I wanted to be part of it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a nice story. It's a nice segue from like feeling basically abandoned because of your disability to feeling like you've got a home and a place in this world, you know. That's so beautiful. So you started at 15. Did that hobby grow quite quickly? What was that like?
I think I was just really young and naive, and I didn't at first understand the concept or the weight that it carried in representing your country. Sitting volleyball was in its grassroots stage when I joined the team. It was a brand new sport. It had actually just joined the Paralympic Games in 2004, and Canada didn't even have a women's team yet. So I joined just as they were creating it. I sucked at volleyball. They only invited me because I was a disabled female with an athletic background. And so over time, they trained me to become the volleyball player that I am now. It took a lot, but it opened me up to a world of possibility with sport and with these women. I started to travel at a really young age. I think my first international competition was at the age of 17, maybe even 16. And I traveled all across the United States. I went to Brazil and England, and we competed in the Pan American Games and World Championships. And honestly, I caught the travel bug right away with the team. And as soon as I turned 18, I started traveling leisurely. And I think because of the team and because of traveling, it really helped boost my confidence because I was traveling with a fierce group of women, and then I started traveling solo and backpacking the world. And it taught me a lot about myself and that I didn't have to rely on other people to navigate and do things. And it just shows the perception on disabilities because even like family friends of my families would make comments like, oh, you're letting Allison go by herself. How is she gonna be able to do things? And it's funny now, well, funny for me to show photos now to those family friends being like, oh yeah, I've sailed across the ocean from Panama City to Cartagena. I've done the world's longest zip line. I volcano boarded down an active volcano, and just doing these things to showcase that disability doesn't have a limitation is what I'm hoping to do. And I mean, even with our disabilities, we might do things a little bit differently and need different tools, but we're still capable of doing things that we love and seeing the world. So
Just a little bit differently, that's all, you know?
exactly.
That's so cool. So you did some backpacking, solo backpacking, which is something I can honestly say I will never be able to do, and I don't wish to do it because it looks like such hard work. How did you find that? How long did you go out? Do you wear your prosthetic all the time?
These are such good questions. I first started backpacking. I did a shorter, I mean, it's going to sound long, but I went for a month to Thailand when I was 18. And then when I was 19, I did a month in Bali. And then shortly after that, it grew. I got accepted to go study French in 2017 in France. And I extended my stay and I ended up backpacking Europe by myself for 3 months. And my sister came to meet me at the tail end. And then I loved it so much that after I graduated with two of my best friends, I went and backpacked Central America for a total of 3 months that summer. And yeah, it's funny because I do wear my prosthetic and then I wear a big backpack with all my clothing in it. But something people don't even consider is I always have to pack an extra prosthetic with me. And so that adds a lot of weight. Everyone's always like, why do you go with such a big bag? It should be smaller. But I'm pretty tall for a girl. I'm 5'8", and so my legs are quite long, meaning my prosthetic is quite long. So I need a larger bag to put it in. And my prosthetics weigh about 7, sometimes 10 pounds. No, I've had them refurbished to use lighter materials for that reason. But it does add a lot of weight to my luggage. But I've had one instance where I was in Greece and my prosthetic plug, it helps release air and tighten my leg and hold it in on a suction system. It broke. And so I had to come home early. So it's just one of those things where I always try to keep an extra prosthetic with me just to ensure that if something happens while I'm abroad, especially in certain countries, I'm not sure what kind of systems they have put in place medically for people with disabilities. And that's always in the back of my mind.
Did you feel like you had to plan a lot in advance? Because I know people like to be spontaneous, but I can't be spontaneous even if I'm just going to the pub. Like I need to look up if the place is accessible, you know?
Yeah, I do try to read a lot of blog posts. And that's truly why I started sharing my story online. Just I wanted to showcase how things are done, even as a prosthetic user, like going to Central America or even Southeast Asia. A lot of the time you do commutes to different islands by boat. And so these were things that I never even thought of. So I love to say that I'm spontaneous, but to a certain extent, because I do have to pre-plan in the case of like, am I wearing my walking leg, which isn't waterproof, or which is more comfortable for longer walks and carrying my baggage, because my foot does have a little bit of like flex. It alleviates a lot of the restraint on my knee. It's just more comfortable for longer periods of time. Or do I wear my waterproof that's a little bit less comfortable, maybe hurts my hip after a long day of traveling? And so those were things that I would often have to weigh. And that's why I love to show those online. So if anybody else with a lower limb difference like me wants to go adventure, they can have someone to kind of gauge or look at and see how I've done it by me sharing my story. I know you and I touched on the representation, and I think that's such like an area that's often lacking. I always say disabled people love to travel too, but we're often forgot about when these trips and things are being organized.
Yeah. I love that you can just like choose what leg you want to wear that day. I find that so cool.
My joke is I actually have, when people are like, I had kids being like, oh, I'm so sorry, miss, that you have one leg. I'd be like, it's okay. I actually have more legs than you.
That is the
'Cause
best response.
yeah, I think I have 5 legs now. I have a swim leg, my everyday walking leg. I just finally got a high heel foot a few years ago. I have a snowboarding leg and I have a running leg. So one of those hook shaped legs.
You can tell that you're sporty. Wow.
Thank you.
That's so cool. Wow. Okay, so you've done a lot, but obviously you've recently been to the Paralympics and I want to know all about that. I want to know, what was it like to know that you were going and that you were going to be competing? What was the whole experience like? Just tell me everything.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Because I still
know.
get
I'm
goosebumps
asking
about
you
it.
so many questions as well.
I love it. I truly wish that I could like bottle everyone up and bring them into my brain or through that whole experience with me. There's many layers to that. And so my team has been trying to compete for years, and we got silver in Bosnia at World Champs in 2022. So we just missed getting the first qualifying seat for Paris at those games. We lost to Brazil. And then fast forward 1 year later, we were in Egypt in 2023, which was a really tough decision for my team whether or not we were going to go because of the war that's going on in the Gaza Strip. So being so close to where we were competing in Cairo. And we talked to a lot of security managers, and our manager did a great job of, just talking to World Paravolley, ensuring that it would be safe for us to go because we needed to qualify. And we decided as a team that we would go. We would go in and get out, and we knew we had a really good chance at qualifying because the way the qualifying matches work, it's by zone, it's by competition. So China was going, but had already qualified for the Asia zonal. Team USA wasn't going. And then we get there, and it's probably one of the most challenging experiences of my life, aside from the games. And we went in and competed against Germany, and we won and got silver. And in that moment, it was just a weird complex of emotions because we beat Germany. And then I started instantly crying because our team just qualified to go to the Paris Paralympic Games. But then you almost have to snap out of it because the next day we had a gold medal match against China. So you're like in this high being like, oh my God, we're going to Paris, but we have another game tomorrow. And so it was one of those things where we couldn't fully celebrate that night. We got back in the zone, played against China, unfortunately lost to China in 4 sets. They're a great team though. And then we could celebrate that night knowing that we were going to Paris. With team sports though, it's kind of hard. Like we knew our team had qualified, but the roster yet had to be created. So it wasn't until the new year of 2023 or 2024 where we had to go to training camps. They did physical testing on us. And then the 12 athletes for our team were declared in April last year. So quite close to the games. And I saw my name on the list that was published for Team Canada. And I don't know how to describe the feeling. I felt proud. I felt like the little girl inside of me didn't know that this would ever be a possibility, because when I was really little, I didn't even know the Paralympics existed because they're not broadcasted the same way as the Olympics. And I just knew that I really wanted to try and elevate Paralympic voices and share my journey online and have people recognize that the word para in Paralympics means parallel, not paraplegic, which is interesting that society just assumed that. So the Paralympics run parallel to the Olympic Games. And truthfully, when I walked into the village and I saw athletes from all over the world with an array of disabilities and competing in different sporting sections, I felt like a part of my inner child healed, because I know that earlier I talked about the isolation of going to the seminars with just disabled people and then not having that integrated in my life. I feel like as I've grown older, I've just sought out for a stronger disabled community. And I think finally I have found it on and off the court. And it's was like the most beautiful feeling, because you don't speak the same language as all these people, but yet you're there for the commonality of being the highest performance athlete there to represent your country and hopefully make the podium. Sorry, I'm crying.
Wow, so emotional.
And then, just to go through everything with my team, we lost to Brazil actually in our preliminary match in Paris. And so we had to go and play them in the bronze medal match. And I knew deep in my heart that we could beat them. We've beat them before, and we've come second next to them so many times. And it was just one of those things where I think a lot of people don't realize that you can be physically fit and an amazing athlete, but in order to truly combat like any internal struggles or hardships, you also have to be mentally strong. And that really tested my mental strength. And we beat Brazil in 3 sets, which is amazing. And as soon as that whistle blew, you can see a video of me. I'm jumping up. I play sitting volleyball and I'm jumping up on one leg and I'm off the ground. I'm so ecstatic, and immediately just waterworks down my face. And I don't think I stopped crying that whole day because I had won a medal for my team, for my country, and for the future generation of disabled children that can now aspire to do great things and know that they can represent their country on a world international stage and get recognized. And it was my team, sorry, I'm ranting, but my team made history. We won the very first sitting volleyball medal for Canada. We won the very first summer team sport since London 2012. And then on top of it, this is the first games. Oh my gosh, I'm crying. It's just such a pivotal moment. It's the very first games where Canada awarded the exact same monetary value to Paralympic athletes as their Olympic counterpart. So I feel like I'm just part of this great like progression in the world where younger me felt so left out and unsure of who she was, and someone that wanted to end her life because of her disability, to someone now where I get to see things turn around and become more equal and obtainable for people with disabilities. And so that's my 180 story.
Wow, I have gotten so emotional listening to that. And you're doing it for younger self. You're doing it for all those people out there, all those children out there that feel like they don't have a place in this world and they don't want to be here because of their difference. But there is room for everyone, and you have made history in just moving things forward in the world and bringing the Paralympics to mainstream social media. Obviously, that's how I found you, representing the disabled community, not only for Canada, but just for other women with limb differences. And just it's just amazing. So, well, obviously, congratulations for your bronze medal. It's absolutely insane.
Do you want to see it? I have it here.
Are you joking?
I'm not joking. I knew I had a call with you today, so I wanted to show you, but this is my bronze medal. So this is a piece of the original Eiffel Tower from the exhibition days in the 1800s. And then it's kind of tarnishing, but it has Braille on the back for the inclusion of all disabilities. And then, the Agitos, which I then got tattooed on myself. And then it has,
cool.
Where is it? Oh, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it is engraved. So it says women's sitting volleyball, which is really special.
Thank you so much for showing us that.
Of course.
My goodness. I've basically been in the presence of a Paralympic medal now. I'm very happy.
I'll just have to come visit so you can hold it next time.
I'm there.
Okay, deal.
That is incredible. I mean, you're going to be buzzing about this for the rest of your life, I'm sure. I'm sure the response has been insane, probably too much that you can't even deal with it all. But yeah, what was that like, kind of the aftermath?
Oh, it's been, if I'm being truthful, it's been really hard on me, actually. I think it's been great in the sense that I've had wonderful people reach out and want to do interviews, and I get to go into schools and share my medal and have kids just learn about what the Paralympics is and what adaptive sport is. And it's been a beautiful thing. But I think if I'm being so honest, it has been really hard. It's been I don't want to say that I've been depressed, but they always warned you about the post-game blues. And I just never understood. I'm like, I'm on such a high right now. I'm representing my country. I'm training full time. I'm with my team all the time. And we talked about, finding a sense of belonging and community. But right after the games, I didn't see my team for 3-4 months. And I took some time off of training. And I felt, I guess, that moment of isolation again, where I was by myself and I I had worked so hard for a goal with so many women surrounding me. And we got to experience it together, to now living in separate cities across Canada and not being able to see them as frequently. So that was a huge adjustment for me. And I don't think people talk about like the mental health aspect of athletes after the games. And so I just wanted to share that because it's so authentic. But aside from that, it's been the greatest gift to be able to go in and showcase this hardware with young kids. That I think one thing I always want to highlight is anyone can become disabled at any moment in time. And it really doesn't have to be scary. If you're an athlete now, when you become disabled, you can still be an athlete if you so choose to be after. And that the Paralympics are an option, or even just adaptive sport. I mean, being an elite athlete isn't cut out for everyone. And just because you become disabled doesn't mean that's what you have to do with life. And kids get so excited about it. It warms my heart.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because I wouldn't have any idea about the post Olympics and Paralympics blues, like you said. And yeah, I can imagine actually just, working so long towards that thing, and then suddenly it's happened and it's like back to reality in a way. That does sound really tough. I'm so glad that you have carried on raising awareness. You also do modeling, am I right?
Yes, I do.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's actually something I never set out to do. It's really funny because my first degree was in photography. So I was always someone behind the camera. I love to shoot portraits. And I moved from a city, I call it a town, Edmonton, so on the west side of Canada, to Montreal on the east side of Canada. And when I moved here, I initially just wanted to try something new. I also have my teaching degree, so I just thought I would be a teacher. I didn't think anything else would really come of it. But when I first moved here, I started working at a marketing job. And within that job, I was working alongside this girl who had said, "Oh, my best friend is a modeling agent and has her own agency. I noticed on social media you share some things about your prosthetic. Can I just show her your profile?" And I was like, okay. Didn't think anything of it. Literally the next day, I get a phone call from this agent, and she's like, "Hi, my name's Michelle. I know we haven't formally met, but I'd love to send you to this casting call today that I think you'd be perfect for. Can you go to this address at this time?" And I was like, "Wait, right now, today?" And she was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I don't even know what to wear. I've never done something like this." And I went to the casting and came back. And within a few hours, I got a phone call saying that I got the job. And immediately she called me up and told me and was like, "Congratulations. Okay, so can I send you over a contract? Because I'd love to represent you now." And so that has kind of been a snowball effect for me, because I've been so far in my modeling career, I've been in an Amazon commercial, a Government of Canada commercial. I've modeled for countless brands across Canada. And then recently, last year, I modeled for Anthropologie's launch of their adaptive friendly clothing line. And so I got to meet other amazing disabled models doing that. And they invited us to have a seat at the table to talk about the adaptive pieces and if they would truly function with our bodies, which I've never been a model that can also provide insight, which I think is one thing that's lacking in diversity, equity, and inclusion is, I think disabled people deserve to be part of the conversation and share lived experiences. And that's how truly the world will become more accessible and inclusive of all. So that's been like a little snippet. It still feels weird for me to say that I'm a model, because I don't know, I just never saw people like me, I guess, in advertisements growing up, but I'm so grateful that I can hopefully be a role model to others.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely didn't see anything like that growing up, and you're again doing it for younger you. Like if little you could see this now, that is, it's just insane how far we've come, and hopefully how far we'll continue to go and push this out and continue to raise awareness. But it's, yeah, so cool that you do that, and it's just nice to see you being recognized for your work and your beauty as well.
Thank you so much. Yes, I always say disability is beautiful. Yeah.
It is, definitely. I want to ask a question about the Paralympics and maybe a misconception. I don't know if you've heard this, but some people tend to think that if you're disabled, it's like, oh, you should enter the Paralympics. I've been asked that before, mostly by children who, fair enough, they don't know any better. And they're like, well, you have a disability. You're going to be in the Paralympics? So I'm like, I'm not an athlete and I never have been. That's a misconception I've heard quite a lot with disability. Do you agree? Are there any other misconceptions that you've come across that you'd like to address?
First, I want to say that it is so refreshing to hear that children say and know the word Paralympics. So that makes me so happy. I know that in the UK, the Paralympics were a huge thing in 2012, and a lot of people still follow them, which I'm hoping every country that hosts is impacted that way and does tune in. That is a very interesting question, because I think that is the misunderstanding with the Paralympics, is people that aren't familiar with disability or disabled athletes assume that it's a sporting event that isn't tiered the same way as the Olympics. So like before, when I shared that we had to qualify, and then even though my team had to qualify, I still had to make the roster and try out. Regardless of your disability or not, you have to be the best of the best within your sport. And so there is amazing organizations across the world that have adaptive sports and teams that anybody can join, regardless of the level of their athleticism. But then it is the Paralympic Games where you do have to be a high performance athlete, and it is so mentally and physically exhausting and enduring. And I do think that once people recognize that you do have to be an elite athlete to attend the Paralympic Games, that's when that mind shift will happen, where we can be seen more on that even playing field to the Olympic Games. Because would you just ask anybody that's non-disabled if they're going to the Olympics? No. But I think it is one of those things where the Paralympics is finally being more worldly recognized. But with that, hopefully they bring up adaptive sport, and that people within their communities can go try sitting volleyball or wheelchair basketball or any type of Paralympic sport, even though they don't plan to compete at the Paralympic Games.
Yeah, very well said.
Thank you.
And yeah, at least the Paralympics are getting recognised. That's all we could have asked for. I do remember actually, obviously 2012, it was in London. My parents took me to a Paralympic game, and I'm trying to think what it was now because I was still quite young, so I don't really remember it. But I do remember my parents like making an effort to introduce us to the Paralympics, which again was a huge deal, even though I can't remember what it was now.
But that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully the awareness of it continues to go, and hopefully it just matches the level of mainstream attention as the Olympics does. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't know. I always just try to share for anyone listening that what might feel heavy and weighted about your disability now, or even learning about other people's disability, doesn't have to be a taboo conversation or like an untouched territory. I think the more discussions we have around it, like just you and I talking about it today, will just normalize disability within society, and hopefully people become more aware of how to be inclusive and have accessibility and accommodations on the forefront of any kind of plans or design. So I just want to encourage people to research and have these kinds of talks.
Exactly. And even if it doesn't affect you, it's still okay to research into it and to learn new things. And hopefully my podcast is a step towards that direction, because I'm learning so much from this podcast, and I've learned so much from our conversation today. So thank you so much for sharing your story and just a little insight into the exciting things in your life, and also the not so exciting things, because that's also just as important. I feel like I could talk to you and ask you questions forever, but we'll just finish with this one last question. I know you've touched on sharing pieces of advice, but if there's one thing we can take away from this episode as a piece of advice for maybe someone who's struggling to come out of the disability closet, or something maybe you'd say to your younger self if it's not too painful, yeah, what would you say?
I want to say that loving and accepting yourself is far more important than others loving and accepting you, your disability or not. And it took me a very long time practicing with positive words of affirmations and gratitude journal to overcome my insecurities. But it is possible. And like I said earlier in the episode, your obstacle or your differences can be your opportunity to do great things, connect with others, or just live a fulfilling life.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed our little chat today. Where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on all forms of social media at Allison E. Lang. That's ALLISONELANG.
Amazing. I definitely recommend giving her a follow. The stuff she posted is so cool, and the awareness that you raised on there is amazing. So please keep going. Thank you guys
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to follow and rate this podcast 5 stars on your podcast platform. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like this episode. Maybe leave a little comment, let me know what you thought. And thank you so much to Cure LGMD2I for sponsoring this podcast. As always, I love you loads. I will speak to you guys in my next episode very soon. But until then, bye.